Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And it may possibly be number 289 in Sounding the Shadows, although I'm afraid I'm still a bit confused. I've got to check that out and get it right. I promise that I might do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Anyway, so what have we been thinking about this week? Actually, something will appear quite trivial, won't
Well,
it?
it's a bit embarrassing, really, because with international politics being so fraught and actually national politics being so fraught and the weather being so off, yes, we have been mainly concentrating on something that's actually just to do with us.
It is to do with us, and it's to do with our sitting room, which is quite a big room, and it has many qualities, but it lacks one thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it lacks flames. It lacks a focal point where you can stand and look at it, and it will be bright and flamey.
Yeah, and it's a bit childish, I suppose, but we've always loved it when we've had an open fire or a log burning stove or something like that. So you have real flames and it's nice and all that. So you know how it is. Those of you who are listening to this, you Google some small area of the universe and you find that there's a million things to look at. So we've started looking at electric fires because we can't afford
all the complications of
putting in
we don't have a chimney
exactly.
and we can't really do that.
It's not going to happen. But what we could do is get an electric fire.
Yeah.
So
a stove, one of those that looks
right.
like a wood burner and is freestanding.
And although I have never wanted one of them, I have never wanted a stove that has false fire and all that. And it began to seem as though, with technology being as it is, there must be something someone's developed. So we've had a look round, haven't we?
Well, we have, including looking at an amazing place. When we walked into it, out of the pouring rain, it was just the most beautiful, full of fires place with flickering stoves and beautiful long fires and everything. They were rather beautiful prices as well, weren't they? So
and you lied about
our
budget, didn't
well,
you?
I didn't lie. I didn't quite lie.
I suddenly heard you say, well, I mean, our budget is only sort of around about
I didn't say that. I said our top.
1,500.
Well, there wasn't much under 1,500, and it was
say
quite
our
embarrassing.
budget is actually somewhere around 300 and something.
or even that, yes. Anyway,
But these were amazing things. No,
they were gorgeous.
yeah. So,
They were not for us.
but there are things about them that we hadn't understood. Although, ironically, we discovered only yesterday that we've got one in one of the rooms in our house.
Well, very old-fashioned.
An old-fashioned version one.
Yeah.
So they have ones that have a tank of water in them, and the water heats up, and lights shine through the water and create a flame
An
effect.
illusion, a mirage, a non-real thing.
That's right, and there is no heat in it.
No, so you can just have that on, and not the heat.
You can have something that looks like, well, actually it doesn't, but something that is supposed to look like
It almost
logs
does.
burning or gas burning.
Yeah.
And of course you have a fan heater, which is the essential heating part of it. That heat comes out from the bottom of the appliance, and that is what actually provides.
I'm sure this is quite fascinating to the listeners, especially those in Australia. But it has been our thing this week.
I found it very interesting because of the resistance I've always had to having something that pretends it's one thing and is actually another. It hasn't been an easy journey for me. I know this is pathetic, but to think of actually buying one of these and talking about it and thinking about it and looking at endless pictures of black things with flames in them. And
well, I think the problem is that, you know, those magazines you get from supermarkets that show you the Christmas food, for example, and everything glistens and everything looks unbelievably wonderful. But it is a little bit like that with adverts for electric fires, well, for most things actually, but where they look just so real until you see them, and then they don't.
Yeah. Well, it's had a slightly odd effect on me, I have to say. I mean, I hesitate to even talk about it in this context, but I was thinking about St. Paul, the Apostle, and his metaphors. And as a lot of people know, he loved his metaphors, right? I mean, I'm quite sure he would say to Luke one day, look at this, it's got this thing about, where the belt is one thing and the helmet's another. What do you think? And all that, and the body in the church, these are the unimportant bits and those are important, etc., etc. And the problem with metaphors is that they lose energy and start to sort of weep and fly away after a while. But this fire thing, a while ago, I think we did a whole day or something on things like false fire. And there were two main examples. One was in the Old Testament, in what book was it in?
Malachi?
No.
Not Malachi, sorry, forget that one.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was about Aaron's sons, who, after God had created fire, they wanted to do it for themselves, and so they set fire to something. And
well, they dressed up as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They dressed up like Widow Twankey by the sound of them. And they suffered a terrible fate. And one of the saddest lines in the Bible says Aaron remained silent because it had gone so horribly wrong. That's the other one was the last book of the Old Testament, which is Malachi, where it says at one point that there was false fire on the altar. Well, it says that God was impatient with the fact that there was false fire on the altar. And we have thought a lot about what that might mean. And I was thinking about these blessed things, these electric fires. And? Well, I'm trying to make the journey from the fact they're just fires to...
Are we back to our electric fires?
Yes.
Or are we on to the...
No, we're electric fires. But,
right, okay.
But the fact is that when I started writing and doing stuff, and ever since then when we've been doing stuff together, we've been pursuing the truth, really trying to tell the truth about things. And probably not always succeeding. But one of the most important aspects of that is to make sure you're dealing with the true source of what is good and what is right and what dictates how you behave and all of those things.
Actually, it's absolutely right. But one of the problems is, just like with the electric fires where you can't have a gas fire or a wood burner or whatever, it is a compromise. And I think for a lot of people, the reason that they start to try to create something that feels like real fire, even when they're not really alive, spiritually, that sounds so boring, but you know what I mean. It is you sort of settle for the compromise, really. And we've talked about it so often. You sing a bit louder, you jump a bit higher. You try so hard to make something feel like fire and look like fire so that you can be warmed by it. It is a genuine problem, I think.
And what are you saying is the cause of that?
Well, I just think because it's not always there, is it? The real fire, you don't feel it. So sometimes you do. Sometimes there's an amazing moment where there's something so real and so exciting and so like a great bonfire. And we used to have huge bonfires at the end of our garden, didn't we?
Yeah, we loved Guttles.
And the fires and the flames would flicker high, and you'd stand in the shadows of that fire and you'd be excited by it. But when it isn't like that, that's where you start pretending a bit. Maybe not you, but I sympathise that...
No, I've done it myself. I know why you might do it. But over the last few weeks at the church where we go, there have been some talks on the fruit of the Spirit. And it's good that we've had those, because we really need to think about that. And I was just trying to think about that today, about the significance of it. And I realized as I thought about it that the problem with thinking about the fruit of the Spirit is that fruit grows on a vine or a tree or a bush or something. In the
You
case of,
sound very knowledgeable.
I know enough to know that. But in the New Testament, Jesus is the vine, and
Yes.
and that if you want, if you want fruit from the vine, it's no good gritting your teeth and saying, "I'm going to do this at all costs." You have to go back to the vine, because that's where the fruit comes from. It doesn't come from a determination to be good. If you see what I mean.
Of course I do.
But if you can't do that, or you haven't quite understood that, you might feel you need to create something that looks like with the body fires. I mean, looks like the real thing,
Yeah.
but the heat isn't actually coming from the place where
No.
perhaps you'd want it to.
I mean, I think again and again we just get it all the wrong way round, don't we? All the wrong way round. We're told we love because he first loved us, and if we haven't experienced that, that's where we need to start, because that will create or start to create all the other things, really, and then things will become a bit more on fire in you. You'll want to do some of the things that you might have felt very cold and miserable, like loving your neighbour or whatever,
Yeah.
So I don't know really.
If you go back to the character we seem to spend our lives talking about, the rich young ruler who comes up to Jesus and says, "Look at my fruit. Look at my fruit. I've been good. I've done all these things all my life." And Jesus looks at him and obviously feels very affectionately towards him. Says, "I think you don't understand at all. You say you want to live forever. If you want to live forever and you want real fruit, come with me." Which is what I've just been trying to say. When I was clearing out the drawer by my bed, Bridget knows that the little drawer by my bed.
I don't know. We'll talk about that little drawer by your bed.
The trouble with the little drawer by my bed is that you can deposit stuff in it and forget about it. So yesterday I went through it all, and I took out the stuff that I could throw away, and I threw it away, but I had a plastic bag full of other things, and one of them was a piece of paper on which I'd written, and it's not a limerick. Those who listen to these things will know that limericks have been flying around for a while here now. It's not a limerick, but it was a little poem. This isn't exactly how it was, but I'd completely forgotten it, and I'm never in connection with electric fires. But this was it. "Fire appears on the altar. Colours are brittle and bold, but the flames are fluttering silk, and the air is suspiciously cold." And I think that's, I suppose, in Malachi, God doesn't like the false fire on the altar. He doesn't like the fact.
Well, he doesn't like false sacrifice
Doesn't like false
either.
anything.
Doesn't
No.
like false anything.
No, it has to be real. And I know, obviously, you can't simply say to a bunch of people, "Right, let's all be real now." But you can accept the difficulty.
And I think you can also say, I understand that you've accepted a compromise, which is that it sort of looks right, and you can pretend a bit, but you need to be aware of that and keep looking. Keep maybe looking for something that is really alive and really a light. Otherwise, you just get so depressing. After a while, you might begin to think, this isn't doing the job for me. I'm not feeling warmed. I'm not feeling alive. I'm not feeling comforted. I'm not feeling inspired.
I understand why people don't want to make this connection, because the demands of love are far more rigorous in a way. Because although they enthuse you and make you want to please the person who loves you and who you love and all that, there will be moments when you're asked to do something that you really don't want to do.
Maybe more than one.
Or many things. I mean, things like, I was talking to a friend this week about, we were saying, what are the things in our lives that where obedience was needed, and we either did or didn't do it. But what was that like, to be faced with something that you knew you had to do, and also, I mean, God never makes anybody do anything. So
Yeah. The interesting thing about real live fire is it does involve work. It involves clearing out the dust. It involves, going and getting the wood. And I was remembering, and we were both talking about our childhood. And I mean, I don't know if anybody else would connect with this, but the image of our fathers, quite separate fathers in quite separate parts of the country, holding newspaper up against the fireplace.
Oh, blimey, yes.
For ages to try and blowing underneath the newspaper to try and blow the embers into something that will be a real fire. And sometimes it was very hard work, but that was in order to have something real and have something that warmed the whole house. I mean,
In fact, in our house, it was a means of avoiding paying to have the chimney cleaned, because that's what was really needed.
and that's another whole parable,
No, I
Adrian.
know it is. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay. Well, my metaphor was fine until you said that.
ruined it,
And no, but I suppose what I mean is that is the problem with the switch on immediate effect stuff in our lives. We have it all the time, the immediate switch on of immediate effect.
Yeah, we do.
Whatever it is,
Or we
and
can
we
do,
all live
yeah.
within it with our phones and our TVs and our everything else that we live within. It isn't hard work to create something, and therefore we accept something that has been designed by somebody else, and we just live in it.
But it,
I mean, going back to the idea that you really have to be aware that this is not real. This is an electric fire. Maybe that's step one, allowing that it isn't real.
yeah, although it's very hard for people who've been brought up in that way.
In what way?
Well, if we're talking about the church, the way of doing things is to work really hard to make it look okay, and every now and then stopping and thinking, it isn't really quite happening how we thought it would, or how we were told it would. And how do you get back to that? Especially as time goes by, and for years and years, you're distracted. We've been professional Christians for so long. It's a terrible place to be because you're always involved in it. And since we've done less, there's more time to think about these things and just think, does it still happen the way it did 35 years ago, when it was so hard to look at unreality and lots of stuff being said that wasn't supported by what actually happened.
Yeah.
And that can still happen, because
I mean, both you and I know that when we do get into reading a bit of the Bible, I don't mean trying to read all of it, but we always get so fascinated and so excited by the bit that we're looking at, and forget that actually it is a pretty exciting book. Not all of it, not all of it all the time, but just allowing that something might still be incredibly relevant is exciting.
I think it's exciting to actually look at the proposition that it is love that will, in the end, determine what we do. That is the idea of it, not the other way around, that you start by busting a gut to be good, and eventually you're good enough to be loved. But that you feel loved, like parents, like children of loving parents. they're filled up with what they've been given, and it motivates them, hopefully, in the way they lead their lives and the way they treat people and all of those other things. But for those who have begun to feel it's a matter of gritting your teeth and becoming different, that's a hard road to follow. If that's what you feel you're stuck with.
But I mean, whether it's false fire or nearly gone out fire, I mean, I think the image of the newspaper and the blowing underneath it, I mean, that's because my father knew that there was an ember there was a bit of life there. That's why it was worth blowing on it to bring it back to life. And I think sometimes we can forget that what was put into us, a living flame.
Well, we certainly saw that with kids in care, didn't we? That they might have become very coarsened and brutalised, but in most, if not all, perhaps of the kids that we worked with, you could find something.
And what God has put in to those who've asked Him into their lives is going to still be in there.
Yeah.
Just may need the newspaper in front of it and a lot of blowing, and whatever, and that will be a very individual exercise.
I think the thing Jesus said about the children, when the disciples said the children wanted to, let's get rid of the children, and Jesus said, "Let the children come to me." And I'd like to suggest to people and to myself and anyone else who wants to think about it, that He calls to the child in us and says, "I know you're still there. I know you're still in there. I know you can be brought to life, and you can find things like love and fulfillment, perhaps not as in the way that you might have hoped you would, but there is real hope in following Him." I do believe that. I still believe that. Yeah. So.
Love to hear from you as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah.